Welcome to the SparkRoom webinar series. SparkRoom provides full-service, data-driven marketing and technology solutions to ignite your performance marketing. Our webinars provide actionable advice and insight to help you better strategize, execute, analyze, and optimize your marketing campaign efforts.
Thank you for joining us. My name is Michelle Verlin, and I'm the marketing specialist here at SparkRoom, the leader in performance marketing for the higher education industry. We provide fully transparent, analytics-based strategies that are designed to do one thing: achieve your enrollment marketing objectives. SparkRoom knows what it takes to attract the right students to your brand while managing recruitment costs. Our superior combination of marketing services and industry-leading marketing software gives schools a competitive advantage, allowing for improved efficiency, higher quality, and better conversion rates. On your screen, you can see the 2015 Leads Council Leader Awards that SparkRoom recently won. These awards showcase the two sides of our business: a gold award for Best Marketing Agency and a silver award for Most Valuable Technology. In short, we're awesome. Speaking of awesome things, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar: Easter eggs, website silliness, and other online hijinks, where we'll be revealing some hidden secrets of the internet. Revealing those secrets is none other than SparkRoom's social media strategist, Jeff Berg. With more than a decade of experience in the worlds of social media and online publishing, Jeff uses his social media judo to help schools streamline their engagement methodologies and create compelling engagement campaigns. In his spare time, you can find him helping rescue people from New Jersey's fabulous wilderness as a part of New Jersey's search and rescue team. Before he gets started, let me just bring up a couple of housekeeping notes. First, I'd like to point out some functionality on your webinar control panel, which is located in the top right corner of your screen. If you can't see it, look for an orange box with an arrow. If you click on the arrow, the box will expand. If you have any questions during the session, please type your questions into the question box, and our wonderful presenter will answer them at the end of his presentation. I'd just like to assure everyone that in a few days, we'll be sending out a recording of today's presentation, as well as a copy of the presentation itself. Again, thank you for joining us, and I'll pass things over to Jeff to get us started.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. So today we are going to be talking about Easter eggs and hidden content that is online. On the screen right now is our agenda. This is what we will be discussing as we go through the presentation today. So we're going to talk a little bit about what Easter eggs are and how they work. We're going to talk about why they work specifically for brands. We're going to present a couple examples, and then instead of best practices, really, we're going to talk about a challenge that I would like to give everybody that is on today, and then we'll have some time for questions and answers. Speaking of Easter eggs, for anybody who is paying attention to our fabulous background on the agenda today, this is, in fact, Where's Waldo, which is a page from Where's Waldo, and this is actually a banned image that caused quite a bit of controversy, which is kind of filled with Easter eggs in and of itself. Waldo is right there for anyone who is watching the webinar today. So let's begin, and we'll start talking about Easter eggs. So what exactly are Easter eggs? So this concept of Easter eggs or hidden content isn't something that's particularly new. For anybody who has started art history that might be on the line, you'll know that the idea of hiding things inside of pictures is something that is centuries, even thousands of years old, that these things are hidden inside of images and whatnot. Now, I'm not talking about some kind of Dan Brown thousands of year conspiracy that's going on, but instead of that, we are talking about, hold on a second, we seem to be having some technical difficulties. If anybody can hear us speaking right now, would somebody mind just writing in a question, letting us know that they can hear us? We'd appreciate that. All right, great, thanks. So Easter eggs are something that is kind of thousands of years old, but it's not a conspiracy, right? These are just pictures of the friends of the artist. I mean, anybody from Leonardo to Goya to Diego Rivera has hidden special messages inside of their paintings. Usually it's done for entertainment value, but in interaction design, when we talk about Easter eggs, we're actually looking at these Easter eggs not from the point of pleasing the content creator, but pleasing the consumer itself. So these are some type of hidden piece of content that's buried inside of a game or application. The first use of them, probably in the definition we're going to be using, was in the late 70s in a video game called Adventure that was published by Atari. But since then, they've moved through tons of different video games and now exist on the internet itself. If you think you haven't run into one, I can pretty much guarantee you have. Google is famous, infamous perhaps, for hiding Easter eggs inside of their content. Anybody who played Pac-Man on Google Maps recently, that was an Easter egg. Google places Easter eggs inside of their Google Doodles. There are things like hidden options in DVD menus, essentially. There's a couple characteristics that all Easter eggs have, though. The first one is that Easter eggs, by definition, have to be hidden. They can't just be things that are out there that everybody interacts with. They have to be something that is buried. They could be enabled through the use of a special code. They could be enabled through the use of, through clicking on a link that not many people follow, or they could be hidden in dense text somewhere on a page, but they have to be hidden. Easter eggs are also kind of based on shared experiences. Typically, when we talk about them, we're talking about them as some type of in-joke. But these shared experiences don't have to be the in-joke of finding the Easter egg itself. The method of finding them could be something that only a few select people know. And in some of the examples today, we'll show what that looks like. The last thing that's very important about Easter eggs is that they have to be worth finding. Frequently, I will describe this as meaning that they have to be fun, but not all Easter eggs are fun. Some have valuable information, some have interesting information, but whatever is hidden inside of this Easter egg, whatever the Easter egg is, it has to be worth finding in the first place. For example, if you hide using a special code, people will be able to pull up an IRS form on your webpage. That's not something that people really want to find. So it's not something that's good. This has to be worth finding and something that people want to share. Because really, when it comes right down to it, Easter eggs work for one very specific purpose. Well, three purposes, right? They appeal to these primal urges we have. Urges to discover, to find new things, or to go and follow paths that not a lot of people have traveled, right? To see something that not everybody knows. They also fulfill this need that we have to know secrets, to know things that not everybody knows. So not only are we out there attempting to discover them, but we're out there finding them. And also, and perhaps most importantly, it's not just that we know the secrets ourselves, but our desire to tell people secrets when we know them, right? And I know it sounds kind of weird because normally when we think about secrets, we think about things that need to be kept. But really, in terms of human interaction, that's not specifically true. Relationships are built on mutually shared secrets. In fact, I would say that all strong relationships are based around this idea. The reason for that is kind of simple. I mean, there are a lot of people who share common interests with you, and some of them are going to be your friends, but you're not friends with everybody who shares a common interest with you. You're friends with people who have a history with you, right? Where you've shared experiences with them, experiences that not everybody has had. Sometimes those experiences are definitely secrets. In fact, I made friends with somebody 2 weekends ago purely because we were both telling secrets at a party. But the idea is that these mutually shared secrets are really what allows us to build relationships. And that's really important when we think about this. By the way, it's not a coincidence that the pictures on the last 4 slides have all been children, right? Because the idea of finding Easter eggs, in fact, the name Easter egg itself comes from the idea that we're on an Easter egg hunt. This urge to discover stuff, to know things that other people don't know, and to share it with our friends is something that in childhood is very simple for us to understand. Perhaps we lose it as we get older, but it is a primal urge, in the same way that we would want to know where the best water hole is, or how to sharpen spears so that we could hunt gazelle properly, and we would want to share that with people we like so that they could have food also. This is the same idea. We wouldn't want to share it with everybody because it would deplete resources. Now, in terms of taking this kind of very deep thing and applying it to brand goals, there's 4 reasons that this works really well for brands. The first one is that Easter eggs allow you a way to reward people who pay attention or who explore content on your website. It's similar to gamification in the idea that that is very specifically gamification of sites is a reward structure being applied to sites, reward structure pulled from common conventions in gaming. But this is the same thing. I mean, this allows you to provide people who are exploring the site, who are, really kind of testing out things, something of value when they find it, right? So there's a reason that they would want to look besides just the information you have. As we mentioned before, this idea that we're going to be building relationships is kind of based on shared experiences. And this allows you a really great way to create shared experiences with people who are visiting. In fact, in international relations, there's something called the football theory of international relations. When you have 2 deeply entrenched sides who you really don't think are going to be able to compromise on an issue, one of the best strategies for being able to get them together to reach a compromise is to get them together and talking about something that is totally unrelated to the issue at hand. So football, or soccer as we would call it in the United States, is one of those things. You get people down talking about football teams and things like that, and once they can reach common ground there, they're much more likely to be able to reach common ground on other things as well. The third reason is that this allows you a way to energize audiences through exclusivity. And the idea that that exclusivity is important to audiences or consumers isn't something particularly new, right? There's tons of loyalty programs out there. Best Buy, if you buy a lot of stuff from them, will let you into special midnight sales and things like that, right? This idea that certain customers are going to be brought into the fold and revealed kind of what's behind the curtain isn't new. And Easter eggs are a way that you can do that with audiences. And the last one is that Easter eggs allow you to lighten the mood in kind of what are already serious experiences. I mean, imagine that you are filling out a 5-page form, right? There's going to be drop off over time on something like that. And so when you hit page 4, perhaps there's something hidden in there that pops out, right? So this is a way to kind of keep people interested and entertained over time. Now, usually when we talk about fun, I'll always have at least one company that says, well, we're a serious brand and there is no room for fun in what we do. So before we move on to the next slide, I would just like to make a real quick point about this, that there is always room for fun in what people do. Usually, I think what happens is when people get defensive, and I will be the first to admit that being funny is incredibly difficult. Creating engaging conspiracies also, is a very difficult thing to do. But just because it's tough doesn't mean it's not important. And just because you have a serious product doesn't mean that you can't also have fun, either poking fun at yourself or at other people. So there's a couple brands that I'd like to talk about really quickly. Probably Microsoft, which is one of the most serious brands, at least if you paid attention to any of the PC versus Mac ads from before, is a company that also is kind of infamous for having hid Easter eggs in their software. And when you think about serious software, there's not a lot more serious than productivity suites, right? I mean, word processing, I will be the first to admit, isn't really fun. How is spell checking fun? But Microsoft, up until relatively recently, regularly hid Easter eggs in, say, Microsoft Word or in Microsoft Office just in general. Internet Explorer at one point in time, if you typed about Mozilla, which is a command that is framed in the same way that a Firefox command would be framed, would show you a fake blue screen of death. This was actually in response to a Easter egg that Mozilla had embedded into Firefox. Also, inbound marketing, kind of serious for most people, but HubSpot, which is one of the premier leaders in inbound marketing, regularly hides Easter eggs as well, including Easter eggs hidden in new things that beta testers are intended to find, and Easter eggs for customers who are just using their software. So for example, HubSpot has a special message that it delivers to people who write a tweet that is exactly 140 characters. And they also have a special message that they deliver to people who write a tweet that is 500 characters or more. MailChimp, which is an email marketing platform, also includes Easter eggs. In fact, MailChimp is one of the most interesting examples of this because MailChimp credits the Easter eggs that they hid in their software with being one of the reasons that they were so successful. They think that those Easter eggs really allowed them to attract the type of talent, the type of creative talent that would allow them to build that company and make a software product that is valuable for others. To some extent, this is true. The quote that's on the bottom of the screen right now is from a person who was reviewing MailChimp, who specifically called out, in addition to the feature set and ease of use and the UI, the fact that these Easter eggs make his daily job of interacting with MailChimp something that is pleasant to do and not something that is bad. So that kind of brings us to the end of describing them. Now we're going to jump into the examples, which I hope everybody will find much more entertaining. Thanks for putting up with a boring part of this presentation. The first example we're going to talk about is the Konami code. And this is actually related to the poll that we had earlier. In fact, let me just hop out and show the results from that poll right now. It looks like only about 13% of people got the right answer to this. We will be explaining this presently. All right, so the Konami code probably came to the attention of most people in the US because of a video game for the third generation of video game consoles, or as most people would call it, the Nintendo Entertainment System. That video game was Contra. It's a video game that was published by Konami, which is a big video game publisher from Japan. The game was incredibly difficult. In fact, anybody who is regularly reading news about video games will have seen that they just tried to have today's children play Contra and did horrible at it. Inside of this game, there was a code that if you entered it would give you 30 extra lives. That code was up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, BA, select, start. Now, if that was a little fast for you, I'll put the code on your screen right now. It looks like this. But here's the interesting thing about this. About 25 years after this game has come out, people like me who were growing up with the Nintendo Entertainment System can still recite this code by heart. We still remember it. In fact, I can recite it super fast anytime this goes on. And we did a little test around the office where I would walk around just saying up, up, down, down, left, right, left, right. And people would be like, oh, yeah, Contra, right? Because they still remember it from back then. So it's some weird random code that still appeals to people. Now, why is a code from a video game that is 25 years old and admittedly wasn't even that great at the time so important? Well, for example, if you go out to the UK site of Vogue right now and you enter up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, BA, what you will see is a small velociraptor with a different hat each time that appears on your screen, lets out a shriek, and then runs across the bottom of your screen. Similarly, if you go out to Dig and just go to the front page and enter up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, BA, what will happen is all of the images will be replaced by pictures of Rick Astley, and then the Rick Roll song will begin to play. And it's not just two websites that are doing this. There are dozens of websites that are on the internet today, anything from Facebook to BuzzFeed to Marvel Comics, that if you enter the Konami code, will have an Easter egg that it will give you, right? So this is pretty interesting. And I want to talk a little bit about why this works. Number one, this is something that targets a very specific audience. I mean, if you think about the demographic profile of people who know this code, it's people who were relatively young, probably 5 or 6, up to maybe 12, and today are probably 30 to 40 years old. People who played video games, but let's admit, the Nintendo Entertainment Console, while not everyone had one, was a kind of generation-defining cultural event. I mean, that was something that everybody from that time period would be able to associate with. The use of the code itself also causes a sense of nostalgia in the people who enter it, right? As soon as we enter that code, I mean, we're kind of transported back to this idea that we're finding hidden content in video games. It's the same type of problem-solving skill that we were just learning at that point in time. We go back to that. And it also builds upon an existing shared secret. And that secret is the code itself. Not everybody knows the code, but enough people know the code that it is something that is very common or that is important that we can share with each other. In fact, it was kind of a fun experience to walk around the office and just say this code to people and see who knew it and who didn't. It's our own little in-joke, right? Now, when we talk about shared experiences for these Easter eggs, you'll see that sometimes, like in this case, the shared experience is the way that you find it. And sometimes that shared experience is finding the Easter egg itself. So to give you an idea of what that looks like, this is the IMDb page for This Is Spinal Tap. It was a mockumentary about a rock band. The movie came out in 1984, which is just a little bit before my time, but everybody who was in band when I was in junior high really enjoyed it. Anybody who's sharp-eyed and looking at this page right now, and also is a fan of This Is Spinal Tap, may notice what the Easter egg is on this page, but if you don't, I will take the liberty of blowing that up for you. Most reviews on IMDb go up to 10, but you'll notice that the rating for This Is Spinal Tap actually goes up to 11. And this is referencing a conversation in the film in which they're discussing how the band's amplifiers go up to 11 as opposed to just going up to 10, and they have a little back and forth. This is actually really clever. I mean, I like this. It's a very simple thing. There's no real special way to find it, except for the fact that the viewer has to be paying attention. But it only appeals to people who are fans of this film because you have to remember that joke to be able to find it, right? So it's really simple, but it's also an in-joke that's kind of bringing together fans. I mean, there's no point to this. And this is actually something that is common with Easter eggs, is that frequently people will say that there doesn't seem to be a point to them. And that's kind of true in the sense that they're not driving people to a specific behavior. But it's also not true when you think about the point of building this relationship, this sense of fun or community from this stuff. Speaking of other films, at one point in time, if you went out to Google directions and looked for walking directions and entered the Shire as your location and Mordor as the place you wanted to go, both locations that are famous, made famous from Lord of the Rings, it would tell you that the walking directions are currently in beta, and you should use caution because one does not simply walk into Mordor, which is a quote from the Lord of the Rings films that has become kind of a relatively well-known meme since the films have come out. Now, I want you to think about this also, right? Again, this is targeting a very specific demographic. It's a much younger demographic than before. Not that people who played Nintendo didn't also enjoy Lord of the Rings, but it also is hitting a younger group. And I think that there's no denying that the Lord of the Rings itself, those three films when they came out, were itself something of a cultural phenomenon, something that people who were of a certain age and a certain persuasion when those films were released would have gone to see. In fact, among my group of friends, they were films that we stood in line to see for at least a day. So it appeals to them. It also is building on a relatively well-known meme that's much more current than that. So there's a couple of ways this brings people in here. Again, this is just something funny, though, and not something that necessarily has a point, but is something that's interesting and amusing. And we're going to move on from a Lord of the Rings discussion to what we call a Lords of the Dance discussion, if you will allow me to make a relatively poor play on words there. But what we're looking at on this page is a website for Wistia. Wistia is a site that specializes in video hosting for businesses. It's a relatively serious thing. Not a lot of people say, wow, the most exciting job in the world is going to be hosting videos for businesses. But it is also kind of a young company. If you go out to their staff page, which is what you see right here, and you just type dance on that page, there's no special box to enter it. You just type dance when the browser is the primary window. Everybody dances. A jaunty jazz song will begin playing, and everybody does their own kind of dance. All of this is animated. Now, this is an Easter egg in and of itself that people are dancing. Hidden inside these different animated images are also kind of Easter eggs. You can see that there is a person with their head on backwards. In this, there is a dog that is chewing on a keyboard in one of the ones further down the page. And then if you continue to scroll down the page, what you'll notice is that the last portrait on the page is a blank profile with a question mark in it, and it says maybe you. Because the point of this in-joke is to attract talent, right? It is an in-joke, it is an Easter egg, And it is tongue-in-cheek. It is poking fun at the company itself. But the real point here is that the same types of creativity that would cause somebody to find this, and let's face it, we don't go out typing dance on most websites, but those type of people who would find this amusing are the types of people that Wistia really wants working for them. You know, that's the same level of creativity or exploration that's really important for their staff. So I think what's interesting about this, and I hope everybody has gotten this, is that while those Easter eggs we looked at before are very interesting, I mean, this is a very purpose-driven Easter egg. It's doing something fun, and it's not necessarily driving somebody to fill out a form or to apply for a job, but it is leading people in that direction. And the whole point of this is to supply something fun for potential job applicants, to give them an idea of what it's like to work there. So it's purpose-driven, as opposed to the Easter eggs before, where the only purpose was amusement or fun or building community. Our next example is for Blackacre Brewing. This one I really like because it displays a kind of interaction that is different than what we would normally expect. And so it's not a secret code, and it's not typing dance on a page where you wouldn't normally type dance. But I think we can all pretty much agree that even if you are under 21, or at least this was true for me, and I would imagine it's true for most people, even if you are under 21 and you hit an age verification screen, you always say that you're over 21. And so on this page, if you go out there and you click on the I am under 21 link, you'll be treated to a picture of He-Man, or He-Man in his civilian garb, if you will, singing to a song, singing horribly to a song, I should add. And this video actually goes on for quite some time. So this, I think, is really interesting, right? I mean, first of all, this Easter egg in and of itself is based around the idea that people are going to try things that are paths that are normally not taken, right? Like, who does click on that under 21 link when you go out to a website that is specifically over 21? Or when you go out to, say, a video on a website and it asks for age verification before you can watch that video. I mean, when was the last time you went out and you decided, I'm just going to see what happens if I enter an age that is way under what their age verification should be, right? So it's relatively small. This does provide a hidden reward, and that it's showing you this video, although I would say that they're using the term reward loosely because the singing really is quite horrible. And this also plays off the idea of nostalgia, which we've talked about several times. Nostalgia for movies that you like, nostalgia for video games you remember from your youth. Interestingly, though, this nostalgia is not for the original Masters of the Universe cartoon. The video itself, which you can kind of see animated here, the video itself became popular about 10 years ago. And so this is nostalgia from people who were wasting time on the internet 10 years ago or for that specific audience. And I think that is very, very interesting, that Blackacre Brewing thinks those are the people that are going to be most interested in that. This is one of my favorite examples. You'll actually notice that throughout this presentation, I didn't use a lot of examples from Google. We've had two of them so far, and I briefly mentioned Google when we were talking about what an Easter egg is. But the reason for that is that Google has so many Easter eggs. There's an entire Wikipedia page devoted to listing what those Easter eggs are. But this one is by far my favorite Easter egg of the internet because it is incredibly simple, and I think most people would say that it's incredibly dumb, but I think it's hilarious. If you go out to Google and you search for recursion, you will see a page of search results that look like this, asking you if you meant recursion. If you click on that link for recursion, it'll spawn another page of search results, also asking you if you meant recursion. And if you click on that, another page of search results with that suggestion. And if you click on that, another page of search results with that suggestion. Forever. It'll keep doing this over and over and over. The reason that I think this is so incredibly funny is that if anybody knows what recursion is, I mean, it is essentially a way of repeating things as if they are the same thing over and over. So Google is effectively demonstrating recursion in their search results for recursion, right? Which is, I know a lot of people think it's dumb or overly geeky. I just think this is absolutely hysterical. Again, it is something simple. It is something that I would say is incredibly clever, right? And it's also somewhat of an in-joke, because if you legitimately don't know what recursion is, you might just think it's weird that even though you spelled it correctly, Google is recommending a respelling of it that's exactly the same way. But if you know what recursion is, this is kind of weird and quirky and fun. Similar to that, if you go out and search for anagram, it'll ask if you meant nagagram, which is an anagram for anagram. And whenever you can make things overly complicated like that, everybody finds it amusing, I'm sure. Anyways, those are my two favorite examples from Google. And that kind of brings us to the end of the examples. Now, we talked a lot about Easter eggs and how they work today, but I just kind of want to point out that the sad truth about Easter eggs, and this is what makes it difficult to discuss, is that there's no one way to do it. In fact, by definition, there can't be one way to create Easter eggs. Easter eggs have to be individual and different. So there's not a set process you can follow to create them, but they do have common characteristics, right? So first of all, as we mentioned before, they're hidden and they're discovered in certain ways. It could be by invoking a code, right? A code that's nostalgic or just some new special code. Or it could be found by exploring, like we saw in the Blackacre Brewing thing, going a path that is less traveled than other paths. But these things have to be hidden. Otherwise, it's not playing off the urge we have to find things. And that's really what's making this appealing to people. Second, they all have to be shared experiences, right? So we saw some examples that were built around shared experiences of nostalgic ideas. Certainly the Konami code is a very good example of this. So is the Spinal Tap thing. Those are both a specific set of knowledge that you need before you would notice or recognize why something was there. And I think from both of those, I mean, nostalgia is kind of important, and nostalgia is a really powerful emotion to play off of. But the more important part is, when we're talking about these shared experiences, usually what they're playing on, and usually what we find nostalgic, are very important cultural experiences, things that we have together with a certain age group. And think about the people who like 80s music, right? Or people who really love Jean-Claude Van Damme films, or people who love Mortal Kombat. I mean, these are all things that today really aren't all that important, but they are shared cultural experiences we have, which we're able to discuss with people around the world if they got to experience them. And lastly, I would say they're fun. Before we called this being worth finding, and perhaps that's a better way, but they have to be something that is valuable, either in terms of entertainment or in terms of something that is relevant or informative, but they have to be something that is valuable for people. Now, there's something I'd like to point out here, though. In-jokes by nature are exclusionary. You cannot have an in-joke that everybody is in on. And so that makes it really important that when you're thinking about Easter eggs, these Easter eggs, and I hope you notice this as a commonality in the ones that we looked at before, none of them are mean-spirited. Right? Frequently, in-jokes are mean-spirited. Frequently, in-jokes are things where we're making fun of a group that's not on the in crowd. But that's not really what these Easter eggs are. I mean, because they're exclusionary anyways, the only fun that they poke might be at the people themselves, as in the Wistia example. But generally, they're entertaining. So, for example, if you had a site for nurses, you wouldn't want to have something in there that was like, hey, all paramedics and doctors suck, right? Like, that's not fun. It's making fun of other people. But if it was something that was an in-joke kind of reflecting at nurses themselves, perhaps that would work better. Or even better than that, a tongue-in-cheek thing about the people who run that site. And as we mentioned before, they should be things that are worth finding. So instead of best practices or running through exactly how you do this, or even really coming up with a summary for the entire presentation itself, I'd like to put forth a challenge, something that I think is really difficult. And that challenge is these three things. You know, I want people who are listening to this to really sit down and think about who the audience is that they're trying to reach. I mean, this is something that we run into all the time, and I will say that it's not unique to anybody else. I'm not saying that Sparkroom does this perfectly all the time, but I think frequently when we talk about who we're trying to hit, we know demographic characteristics, we know behavioral characteristics, we might know certain types of purchase history or certain types of life events that we're looking for, right? But that's a really bad way to describe people. I mean, all of those things are true about people. But if you're looking to create a relationship with people, that's not what you're looking for, right? So you know all this stuff about your audience. What do you think are common cultural reference points for them? Out of the people you're trying to hit, what are experiences they have all shared? What are things they have all participated in? What are things that they know on a deep level? Like I could recite 25 laters, a random code from a random video game I haven't even played since then, and I was horrible at. But what is those things for your audience? And then think about how you can invoke them. How you can invoke that in your audience, how you can speak to them in that way. And I think it's a really valuable exercise. I hope everybody else does too. And that kind of brings us to the end of this presentation. I had a wonderful time sharing all of these secrets with you guys, and I hope that you guys had a wonderful time discovering them yourself, and will equally have a wonderful time sharing them with other people. Just like to point out that if anybody has any really great Easter eggs, please feel free to share them with me. I would love to hear about them and potentially share them with others. And I think that they're fascinating and always a nice way to waste time in the office when I'm pretending to do work by building webinars like this. And now I'll turn everything over to Michelle, and we'll have some questions and answers.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Now, as you mentioned, we'll have some questions. Again, if you do have some you would like him to answer, please type them into the questions box on your webinar control panel. If you can't see the control panel at the moment, look for the orange box with the arrow towards the top of your screen. Click on the box and the control panel will pop back out, and you can type in your questions towards the bottom. Okay, we already had some questions come in actually. The first one for you, Jeff, is what would you say the best practices are for getting the word out about Easter eggs on a particular site?
So that's really interesting. I mean, so this is something that I think is really interesting, and it kind of depends on the method for finding the Easter egg, right? So, for example, the Konami code. I mean, there's not a lot of people who are going out and entering the Konami code on websites, just random websites. Usually people know about this. And in fact, I would make the point that the Konami code itself, when it was originally shared around, like I discovered it through Nintendo Power, which was a magazine that Nintendo published, right? So even they were sharing it with a select group of people, in this case, subscribers to that magazine. So I would say we follow the same thing, right? Like, if it's something that's really easy to find, I mean, I guess the point is, like if it's something like the Blackacre Brewing thing, that I might just let sit, and we'll see how many people click on it. And in fact, not to really make this boring, but I would put certain types of metrics, I would put certain types of tracking on the page so that we can track metrics about how often people are being exposed to this, just so we have an idea about it, right? I mean, I think that's really important if you want to see if they're being shared successfully. The other way to check would be to like monitor online conversations and see if anybody's talking about it. But realistically, I think the metrics on the page itself is probably a better way to do that. In terms of sharing it, though, certainly one way to do it is through just kind of letting it be there. Maybe not the best way. Depending on the type of company you are, if you have a loyal brand following, letting one or two of them know might not be a bad idea. Certainly, you can see companies releasing certain types of hints that things might be hidden somewhere on Twitter frequently, right? So, for example, the Fallout 4 video, which was just announced last week. There were hints about that stuff released on Twitter well in advance. So that's a way to do it too. But yeah, I mean, you don't want to make it available to everybody. Maybe trying to find people who are brand advocates and releasing it to them, and seeing if they think it's amusing would be a good way to go. Or, there are other companies. I mean, certainly we talked about HubSpot really quickly at the beginning, but a lot of their Easter eggs are kind of blatant. I mean, not the fact that they have a secret dog that beta testers will find. That's something that's different. But but some of their Easter eggs, for example, their redesigns of their logos and things like that, they just put out there and they let people find themselves.
Now, do people have to hire a coder in order to get embed the eggs, or can they do it themselves?
So it's an interesting question. You can. So I have some knowledge of coding myself. I would say the process for creating something relatively simple that listens for what people are typing on a page is relatively easy to do using JavaScript. Most of this stuff is not something that you need to be spending a significant amount of time doing dev work for. In fact, I would say like this is something that realistically could be put together in a day or less, to implement it and get it running. I have the sneaking suspicion that most of the pieces of code that would be required for, say, listening to the Konami code are available online. I mean, for example, I don't know for sure about that code, but I certainly know that WordPress has a variety of plugins that are meant to do things that are kind of odd or silly. So that stuff is already out there. Now, certainly, you don't want necessarily the same Easter egg as somebody else, though. So, for example, directly copying Vogue UK's Velociraptor, while it might be amusing, like you wouldn't necessarily want to create that experience. But the triggers themselves should be relatively easy to put together, I would say.
Great, thank you. Now, do you have examples of Easter eggs in social media, or typically just on specific websites?
So it's kind of interesting. That's kind of an interesting question. I mean, certainly the Easter eggs on the websites are the ones that are easiest to find. Easter eggs inside of social media itself can take a variety of different forms, right? Like certainly, but social media, it's is really a platform that we use for sharing things, right? Like that is it. I mean, it's not strictly speaking another channel. Like it is its own kind of experience where you're building these communities. But these are things that are going to leverage stuff. So, for example, if you're sharing images on Facebook, is there something hidden inside of that image or hidden inside of a video, right? Your latitude on social media websites to build something that monitors for the Konami code is going to be really small because you don't control any code about that site. So you would have to build things that exist inside of the methods that you're allowed to share stuff. And I would say that's inside of pictures or other things like that. I will say there is an author who used social media to some great effect while doing this. For anybody who has read House of Leaves, which is a kind of a postmodern mind-bending horror book that is self-referential and has a lot of kind of metafiction about it. It's a wonderful book if you can make your way through it. It is very confusing for many folks, but it is very engaging as well. He recently did something where he was releasing pictures of things that look like stars, just tons of pictures of them along with certain numbers. And all of these things put together revealed a code. And that is something that is possible too. I mean, you could definitely hide things inside of pictures using something called steganography, which basically is embedding of messages into pictures themselves to do something like that. But yeah, so there are ways to share that strictly on social media, but you're kind of at the whim of what you can get in there without coding it yourself. So they're not necessarily as fun as or as flashy as the examples that we showed in here.
I think one last question for right now is, why was the Where's Waldo graphic banned? You mentioned earlier.
Good question. So I remember this from when I was a kid. This was the first Where's Waldo book. Incidentally, in other countries, the original name of that book is Where's Wally. But in that picture, and it's actually covered up by the agenda in this one, there's a woman who is laying on a beach towel, sunning herself topless, and somebody either stole her suit top or spilled water on her. And so she's kind of arching her back up, and you can see some breast in that. And then there's also two men, one of whom is African-American, that are in what appears to be some type of compromising position, slightly above and to the left of that. And all of those things put together cause people to kind of react in a very negative way. Now, I mean, it was there were many comments about why that was bad, and made it a banned book. But things that I don't think we would find particularly shocking today, and maybe even most people wouldn't have found particularly shocking back then. But vocal minorities often kind of rule the day with things like that.
All right, great. Well, thank you everyone for all of your questions. Thank you, Jeff, for your fantastic answers. And that's all we have time for right now. But if you do have any further questions or need additional information, please feel free to contact Jeff using the information listed on your screen. You also could always reach out to us at webinars@sparkroom.com. And for more information on Sparkroom's product and services, feel free to go to www.sparkroom.com. Again, if you missed any portion of this presentation or like another look at the deck, I'll be sending out to everyone who registered for this webinar in a couple of days. And you can also view it on our blog, which is www.sparkroom.com/blog. Thanks again for joining us and have a great day.
Thank you for your time. For more performance marketing resources, including our series of on-demand webinars, go to sparkroom.com/resources.